Are you ready to take your first steps towards financial freedom by investing in property? Whether you're a first-time investor or you've started your portfolio but need some help continuing to grow, 2022 REB Buyers Agent of the Year and Rising Star finalist Lachlan Vidler and his team at Atlas Property Group are here to help. As experts in property investment, Lachlan and his team are ready to help you take your next step in growing your portfolio. By completing the research, sourcing and negotiations, Lachlan goes the extra mile to find you a high-performing investment property. Visit atlaspropertygroup.com.au to book in your discovery call absolutely free of charge.
This is a Momentum Media production.
Welcome to the Smart Property Investment Show, the podcast by investors for investors.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Smart Property Investment Show. Grace Ormsby here. I'm in Sydney at the moment, and there is a lot of rain about. I don't know where anyone is listening to the show from, but take care. This rain is ridiculous, this rain bomb event. Just to timestamp this episode, it's the 5th of July and there's still a lot of rain out there. I think it is quite isolated to the Sydney area, but wherever you are in Australia, look after yourself at the moment. There's always a lot going on, and 2022 has been a bit of a ridiculous year for a lot of people, and I think it just caps off what's been a pretty insane couple of years. And so it feels quite timely that today's episode I get to talk to someone who we originally chatted to back in September 2020 in the midst of the pandemic. I think Melbourne was going through a bit of a lockdown at the time, so luckily no one is really dealing with that at the moment. But John Afendulis, welcome back to the show.
Hi Grace, good to be back with you guys after almost 2 years.
It's pretty crazy, actually, to look back. I had a bit of a listen to the episode again this morning ahead of this one, and to think how many things have changed but also have stayed the same. And for you yourself, it sounds like you've got an update for us today, which I'm super, super excited to hear about. And obviously a lot of that has had to do with your property journey. But before we get to that, can I get you to just share, just for anyone who hasn't listened to the episode, of how this personal trainer purchased 2 properties in lockdown? Can you give us a quick rundown back of those properties again for those that don't remember or don't know, and then we'll go from there and see what's changed for you since then?
Yeah, sure. So my partner and I bought 2 properties in the midst of lockdown, and we bought them in quick succession. So we have our place in Glenroy where we live, and then we bought a place in Ballarat. I think it would have been March or April 2020. I can't quite recall. And a few months later, we extracted the equity and bought a house up in Brisbane. And it was almost off a whim. I never really had much interest in property before that. And I thought, this lockdown, I think, presents opportunities that we won't see again in our lifetime. And yeah, long story short, both properties have done really well, plus the property in which we live. The Brisbane property is pretty much doubled in value. And the Ballarat property has seen over $100,000 worth of growth. And if you look at the 3 properties overall, the LVR is around 51%, whereas when we first bought those properties, we were leveraged at about 80%. So it's been an interesting journey with that small portfolio.
Congratulations to you. Could you have even thought back then, that you would see that Queensland property double in value? Was that kind of in the realm of expectations at all? Not really.
Well, especially at the very start of COVID, there was no conviction that these properties are going to skyrocket in value, because everywhere you looked, whether, it was the big banks or, if you watch Channel 9 News every night, they were all quite pessimistic about the market. And you'll hear time and time again that the market's going to drop by 40 or 50%. And my background in economics told me there's something not quite right here. And when you put it in context that the property market is the biggest asset class for most Australians, I knew deep down that the government was not going to allow the property market to tumble. So I was expecting growth. Did I expect the Brisbane property to double in value in less than 18 months? Definitely not.
So where are you sitting with those properties now, before we get into the rest of it and what's happened since then? Can you give us a quick rundown of what they're renting out for?
Yeah, so with the Ballarat property, it's a rental yield of, I think, 6% or slightly higher than that. So again, the property is positively geared. With the Brisbane property, we did about a $50,000 renovation on that. And we bumped up the rent by, I think, $80 per week on a new lease agreement. So that yield is pretty high as well. I think 6% and above. So not only are both properties positively geared, but we're seeing quite a lot of increase in the equity in both properties as well in a short period of time.
I also want to remind our listeners, John, and for those that don't know too, when you first came on this show, just 6 months earlier, you'd been planning to buy a gym.
Yeah.
Are you really, really glad that that's not the path you went down now?
I'm very glad because if I bought the gym when I wanted to buy the gym, it would have been literally at the start of the lockdowns here in Melbourne. And I'll never forget it. And I remember mentioning this on the other podcast as well. I was literally about to put pen to paper on a contract for a gym. And that's when COVID reared its head. And thankfully, I was in my cooling off period, so I backed out of the contract. But things would be very different if I had bought a gym.
And let's just reiterate sort of why you chose property. Obviously, just the kind of asset class that it is. It sounds like, as a future generator of wealth for yourself. What has been your plan? Has it evolved at all, your plan through, property investing for the future?
Yeah, definitely. I think ever since we bought those two properties, I've really immersed myself in the world of property, and I became very passionate about it. And, the more books I read, the more I realized it's really a game of finance. So if you master finance, you master property, there's definitely plans on the horizon. We're pretty close to buying our fourth property because there's substantial equity we can tap into now. So really, because of the risk we took early on in 2020, I think that's opened up a lot of doors for me and my partner. And, like everyone, the goal is to build a portfolio, but it's also about making the smart decision, not just buying something because you can, buying an investment-grade property, which is something we hear time and time again on this podcast.
And we are all about mastering property here at Smart Property Investment Show. We're going to take a quick break. Love to find out where you're looking, John, for that next investment property after the break. See you on the other side.
Ever wondered how you can invest like the top 1% of Australian property investors? Henderson Advocacy has been at the forefront of helping everyday Aussies improve their financial freedom. So if you're a savvy investor or someone just starting out on their property journey, give Henderson Advocacy a call today. Head to www.henderson.com.au. Don't invest alone. Invest smarter.
Welcome back to this episode of the Smart Property Investment Show. I'm joined by John Afendulis, previously a personal trainer who was looking to buy a gym. If you haven't listened back to that episode, go check it out, how this personal trainer purchased 2 properties in lockdown. A lot of things have changed, John, for you since then. So before the break, you sort of alluded to the fact that you're looking now to buy another property, and it sounds like you're very, very well positioned to do so. Can you talk us through what the plan is from here, what your, train of thought is, and how you're actually going to end up enacting that?
Yeah, so I've got a few ideas sort of running through my head, but with this next property, it's definitely going to be a fully detached house here in Melbourne, most likely northern suburbs. I'm pretty confident that I'll be engaging a buyer's agent to buy this property, not because I don't have the skill to buy it myself, but it's just more so about time and efficiency. And again, the more I learn about property, the more I see the value in a buyer's agent. So I'll be, outsourcing the buying to them. I think the market overall, we're in an environment where rates are dropping, prices are stagnating. So I think 12, 18 months ago, it was definitely a seller's market, but now we're into a buyer's market. I'll probably hold off another 6 months or so before we pull the trigger, because I can see prices going down even further. But most likely, definitely within the next 12 months, we'll be buying, a property in the northern suburbs.
It's interesting that you say that you're going to wait, in that a lot of people are sort of already looking at going, now's probably a good time, but you think that we could still see some more potential for changes. Just pure, the context is, isn't it, that the RBA is being quite aggressive with its raising of rates at the moment. Things could change over the next 6 months.
Yeah, definitely. And I think people weren't expecting the RBA to be so aggressive. A 50 basis point jump is huge, and there's no sign of that aggressiveness abating. And not only that, there is, in my opinion, I think there's a lag between the RBA decision and what happens in the market. So what we see today from the RBA will have a flow-on effect in 2 or 3 months' time. And even speaking to a few mates who are into real estate, they're saying the same thing. if you want to buy, hold off another 3 to 6 months.
Some good insight there. So why Melbourne's northern suburbs? What is it about that area that's attracting you to it?
Oh, well, that's where I've always grown up. I don't really want to move down to the southeast. I prefer to sort of stay in the north. I think there are pockets of the north that are well poised to see growth in the long term. And not only that, we can pick up a nice 3 or 4 bedroom, house for between 700 and 900,000, which is sort of, the budget that we're looking at. And I think it'd be a nice place to raise kids. Not that I have kids, but if that would happen one day.
Planning for the future. So that will become the owner-occupier property for you?
Yes and no. So I think the plan will be to rent where my partner and I intend to live, so we can use the negative gearing benefits of investment property. Not only that, by buying this property as an investment, we can use the rental income to boost our borrowing capacity, and then give it a year or so, then we'll make that property our owner-occupied.
Okay, cool. And so then there's obviously plans to keep investing, I'm guessing, based on that, originally using that as an investment property and then turning it into the owner-occupier place. How many properties are you looking to invest? You've obviously crunched some pretty strong numbers here and you've got some decent equity to be leveraging from. So is the world your oyster at the moment? Are there just thousands of possibilities running through your head?
Yeah, look, I think the future looks bright. I think once we buy a fourth property, our strategy will change a little bit. We'll, start looking at commercial properties, may look at subdivisions in the future. And I think once you buy your fourth or fifth property, you do hit a ceiling in terms of your borrowing capacity. So strategy definitely does have to shift. So let's say we do buy this fourth one. If we do buy a fifth, it will be purely a cash flow play, because without the cash flow, again, there's a ceiling you hit in terms of how much you can borrow.
Interesting for cash flow as well, I think, given the changing market that we've been seeing, will that also see you look elsewhere? You obviously, while you're looking now in Melbourne's northern suburbs, you're not afraid to go interstate, as you've done by going into Brisbane markets. Are there any other markets around Australia that you are eyeing off?
Oh, look, if you listen to a lot of buyers agents, they've been banging on about Adelaide and the Perth market for the last 6 to 12 months. Who knows when those markets will start stagnating. I think the rental yields in Adelaide have always been really strong. Again, you're not going to see much capital growth unless, you sort of buy at the right time. If I were to buy interstate, I think I'll definitely stay away from Perth, because I don't have the risk tolerance for an area that's heavily reliant on mining. I just think that's not a smart place for me. But yeah, as I said, I'll be putting a lot more faith in the buyer's agent. So what they say, I'll most likely go with.
And I know you must be pretty busy at the moment, and this is probably going to be a lot of the conversation for the rest of the episode, but property pretty much has changed the trajectory of your life. I hope you don't mind me using that phrase for that. But since you appeared on the show last time, a lot has changed for you. Can you share a little bit about, the personal and career journey that you've been on since September of 2020?
Yeah, so, once we bought those 2 properties, and as I said, I became really immersed in just reading as much as I possibly could about property. And the more I read, the more I realised, well, this is a game of finance. So I thought, you know what, I'll just do a cert for in mortgage broking, purely just to boost my own knowledge. Because as I said, master finance, you master property, right? And when I finished the course, I'm like, I think I can make a pretty good go of this, working as a mortgage broker, because I love property, I love finance, I love being able to talk to people and talking about strategy and helping them achieve their goals. And I decided to become a mortgage broker. So now I run my own business, Next Step Mortgage Broking. We're based out of Bundoora as well as the CBD. We've got 2 offices, and it's been an amazing journey. And if I'm being honest with you, I get quite emotional when I think about it, because property has given me so much. And what I love about broking is that you deal with an array of different clients, first home buyers, investors, people looking to refinance, and they really let you in, and it's amazing. And funnily enough, it all started from buying this 2-bedroom unit in Ballarat, which I just bought on a whim. So it's quite emotional, to be honest.
Kudos to you, John, for that. I mean, not everyone, I guess, that, decides that they're going to learn a bit more about how property financing works and then they're going to go do their Cert 4 in mortgage broking. Not everyone would then take that step to become a mortgage broker from that. But for you, that's what's happened. Is this something that you'd be encouraging of other people? Like, how was that course itself? Did you actually learn a lot? How did it shape your kind of decision? Has it changed the way you approach financing at all for your own journey?
Yeah, it's made me realise that each bank and each lender is very different, very different. And I think when I first started my property journey, I just thought a bank is the same. If Bank A says you can't get a loan, then all other banks will say no. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. And yeah, working as a broker, it's definitely changed how I approach property because it's all about knowing, my specific situation and financial circumstance and matching that with the right lender and the right bank. And I've had clients come to me and they've said, we've gone to 3 different banks, they've all said no. And sure enough, once you understand the client's situation, there's always a bank out there to meet their needs. But it's just really opened up my eyes. And as I said, you master finance, you master property.
The aim of the game. We're going to take a quick break there. We'll be back in just a second with more from John Afendulis.
It's time to get help. Interest rates are increasing. Inflation has hit an extraordinary 5.1%, and the chance to secure a golden egg property is getting narrower by the day. Dragan from Buyers Agency Australia has been presenting the facts and helping property investors make smarter, well-informed, educated decisions in property for years. So, what are you waiting for? Get in touch with Dragan today at www.buyersagencyaustralia.com.au. Invest with integrity.
Welcome back to this episode of the Smart Property Investment Show. I'm joined by John Afendulis, who now has 3 properties under his belt, a brand new career since the last time we talked to him back in September 2020. It's crazy how quickly things can change, John, and you would be the first person to agree with that. And it's amazing what you've been able to achieve with property as the pathway for that. When you even did this certificate, I know we talked about it a little bit before the break, but how long was it into that where you went, hang on, this is where I should be going, into the mortgage broking space?
So I think it was when I finished the course. And I think, like most courses, you don't really know, you don't learn what you need to know, if that makes sense. But I just got to the point where I saw myself doing this every day. I saw myself crunching numbers, meeting with clients, understanding, how to help them achieve the end game. So, soon after my course, I realised, let's give this a crack. And it's been a whirlwind 12 months. It's been absolutely amazing. Business is really busy, it's just being able to be a part of my client's life for that period of time. It's been awesome. And, I'll definitely encourage a lot of other investors to maybe think about getting into the broking industry. It is a lot of work, but I think with anything, if you're going to make it worthwhile and successful, you have to work pretty hard. But there's a really smooth transition from being a property investor to being, the owner of your own mortgage broking business.
It does make sense, doesn't it? You wouldn't really want to go into the space if you don't have that passion for property, if you're dealing with it every day. And obviously there's a lot of property investors out there who are very passionate about property. You wouldn't be dabbling in this space. You wouldn't be listening to podcasts every day if you didn't feel that way about it. I'd love to hear then, John, what's next for you? We've talked about that potential property purchase in the next 6 months and then maybe another one a year or so down the track from there. What now? I know it probably will change again. We'll have to get you on the show in the next couple of years to see how much that's changed again. But where are you taking your property investment journey from here? And I'm assuming it's also going to, dovetail in with your work in the mortgage broking space too.
Yeah, well, the future's always uncertain, but I do have a bit of a plan in place. Once we buy the 4th property, I'll be thinking about investing in property that's not necessarily residential. As I said, commercial property where the yield's a lot higher. That's on the cards. I really think that the next step would be a subdivision. Get a block of land, cut into 3 or 4 pieces. And there are certain pockets in Melbourne that are seeing a lot of that subdivision, especially in the northern suburbs. You'll see a block of land that's vacant today, and 6 months down the track, they've got 4 townhouses on it. So that's on the cards. But really for me, I think it's important to love what you do, whether you're a property investor or mortgage broker. My goal is to continue to have that passion, to continue working on my portfolio, working on my business and helping my clients. And the day I'll lose that passion is the day I'll stop investing. And hopefully that day never comes.
And so, it doesn't even really sound like you're doing all this for early retirement. What's the reason behind all this? Wealth creation? Is it for, just future proofing? Where do you see the value coming in from actually taking on this portfolio and this journey?
Well, to be honest with you, you hear it time and time again on the SPI where people say, it's just about financial freedom. It's about, giving ourselves certainty in retirement. For me, I don't really follow that narrative. For me, it's the actual challenge. Can I set myself the challenge of buying a 4th or 5th property? Can I set myself the challenge of buying a block of land and creating $500,000 worth of equity through a subdivision? So for me, it's a challenge. I think chasing money for the sake of money is a really sad way to live. And for me, it's just about that goal. Can you achieve what you want to achieve?
Pretty cool way of looking at it too, because it's always going to, egg you on that little bit, provides a bit of extra motivation, behind the scenes to still be doing it. And I can see why you are so passionate about it when you are taking that perspective on the whole thing, John. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been so wonderful to catch up and see how you've been going over the last couple of years, because, it could have very easily, I know in September 2020, everything was looking a little bit better than it had earlier in the year, but it was still quite rocky. There was a pretty uncertain future ahead, and to see how you've come out the other side and are thriving is great.
No, thank you, Grace. It's been nice chatting, and hopefully I'll see you guys in 2 years' time.
Absolutely. Already looking forward to it, John. Thank you again. To everyone who is listening at home, we hope you have enjoyed this episode. Like or review us on whatever platform that you listen to your podcasts on. Reach out if you have a story similar to John's or something a little bit different. We're always looking to hear from people in the space who are doing some pretty amazing things in property investment. And if we don't hear from you, we don't know that you exist. So reach out, editor@smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. Stay up to date with us on our website. Subscribe if you haven't already. We're also on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Until next episode, stay safe and well wherever you're listening from. Bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property, or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.
It's safe to say the property market has been red hot over the last few years, with some of the markets we've selected in 2021 rising over 40% in a 12-month period. It's very likely that if you're a property owner, your property has gone up 20% minimum in value in the past 12 months, and you have most likely accrued sizable equity that can be recycled and extracted to build your investment portfolio. With interest rates increasing, you might be wondering where to invest to maximise capital growth and cash flow in 2022 and beyond. Well, to save you time, energy and guesswork, award-winning author and regular guest on the Smart Property Investment podcast, Paul Glossop and his team at Pure Property Investment have outlined the top 30 affordable suburbs poised for strong capital growth over the next few years with sound cash flow. Grab your free Top 30 Guide to Property Investment guide today at purepropertyinvestment.com.